Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about combining AI-driven facial coding, or emotion AI, and traditional qualitative research to better understand viewer responses, particularly to trailer content in this case. So first, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Alex Duckett, and I'm the account director within media analytics here at Affectiva. So my background is in insight and analytics. My role with Affectiva is very much focused on ensuring our clients get the absolute maximum value out of their emotion AI data.
And I'm Gugi. I'm a design researcher with Vidlet, a mobile video research company. And my role at Vidlet is utilizing mobile video data to inform companies' decisions around the consumer experience.
Lovely. Let's move on to the challenge that we faced. Our media and entertainment clients found that creative trailer content needed to achieve a number of different things. So it needed tailoring, editing, and targeting based upon how different viewer groups would feel towards the content itself. And this is a challenge that they felt wasn't being adequately met by traditional and established research methodologies. Specifically, traditional quantitative pre-testing was often used for this type of research. Trailer testing before the trailer goes live. However, the perspective from our media and entertainment client was that this type of approach was really unsuited to understanding a genuine underlying emotional response, or type 1 or system 1 thinking, where the intuitive feelings and reactions are really brought to the fore. And so what they wanted was a rigorous and scientific basis for understanding that immediate emotional reaction to the trailer content. What they'd experienced in the past was that any attempts to segment an audience or separate an audience had been based around quite stale and traditional demographic classifications alone. And what those demographic classifications alone don't do or haven't done is really adequately capture the modern reality as to how different types of viewer feel in response to different types of genres, different types of content. So what we wanted to do was embrace that complexity and yes, take into account of demographic characteristics, but also take into account just how different people feel differently to different types of content. So what were the design needs for this study? Well, we needed an approach that could achieve a number of key ends. First, the approach needed to be sensitive to the natural viewing environment. And what we mean by that is that we needed to capture viewer responses to the material as they were sat at home on their sofa, in the living room, wherever it may be, for reasons of practicality. It was during the pandemic when we were conducting this, but also they wanted to get a sense of, okay, what is the viewer mindset like as they would be watching this type of content in real life. So relaxing at home, with family and friends or on their own, whatever the natural context may look like. We also wanted to make sure that we were eliciting unfiltered and underlying emotional responses. So in this area of research, often the dial test will be used for testing trailer content. And absolutely, we've got no problem with that type of testing, that reflective thought and feeding back on how you're feeling in each and every moment. But this response needed, or this approach needed, a passive measure. So we're not getting viewers to think too much in the moment, rather we're passively measure how they were really feeling in each and every moment through the content. It was a different type of trailer, pushing boundaries in terms of the genres. So we really needed to get to that underlying feeling. And then finally, as we've touched upon already, what we wanted to get a sense of was how different viewer groups felt and how they could be differentiated on emotional variables. So looking at different types of emotional response, how could we separate viewers based on how they felt, with a view, of course, to target appropriately, potentially tailor appropriately the trailer content down the track. So in terms of the technical approach that we took using emotion AI data, the visual to the top right probably captures best the method that we're undertaking here. So what would happen is that our software would effectively capture facial features, and then based on facial expression movement, moment by moment, whilst the viewer is being exposed to the trailer content, we're getting a real sense of how they're feeling in each and every moment across a range of different emotion measures. Practically, what we did to achieve this was simply share a web link URL with each and every respondent in our study, who could then click on the link, agree to have their facial features recorded through their webcam or camera device whilst watching the content, so on their phone, their tablet, their desktop computer, whatever it may be. And then what we're doing once they've watched that content is processing and aggregating the emotional response across that audience of interest. So we have a real moment by moment picture of how viewers are responding to the trailer content itself. Following that, viewers were able to then provide both qualitative and quantitative feedback via the mobile diaries, which the Vidlet team had implemented. And the real, I think, advantage of this approach was we were then able to connect and link all the different sources, all the different types of information. So we had the qualitative, the quantitative, the emotion AI, all coherently linked together. So you had a full brain picture of response, or we covered every way that a viewer would think about this. So in the moment, reflectively, and then in their own words, and from a qualitative perspective also. The final methodological step then was in synthesizing that data. So bringing that data all together to inform that emotional-based segmentation towards the end of the trailer. Here at Affectiva, we're used to this type of testing, so entertainment testing, content testing in this way. And so what we're able to do is bring relevant benchmarking and also a wide range of foundational data that actually encapsulates all different types of background, ethnic groups, age, culture, geography, wherever you are. So we're making sure actually we're giving a real valid point of comparison when we're interpreting the data, obviously with all the richness and the breadth of insight that the Vidlet team were bringing to that also.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. So as Alex was saying, we were able to really take the quantitative data followed by the qualitative data from the mobile diaries to really understand who these people are and why they felt the way that they felt and while watching the trailer. So we were able to take demographic data, which is kind of the classic way of segmentation, and combine it with, this quantitative, emotional, expressive data with what they're saying as to why they expressed those emotions, and even allowed them to provide recommendations to our client. So we learned that there were distinct emotional groups, and there were some characteristics that made up these groups that made them distinctive from one another. And so, like I said, we were able to take this kind of holistic collection of data of how they reacted, who they are, and why they reacted that way, and combine that to provide some really nuanced and specific advice to our client based on these three groups and how they can, and who their target audience is, and how they can actually achieve a larger target audience. So the first group that we identified was what we're calling the lost viewers. And this group made up about 20% of our sample and was largely represented by younger boys who described in the mobile diaries as feeling scared and confused by the trailer. As Alex talked about, this trailer really pushed boundaries, and we learned that this maybe pushed the boundaries too far for these younger boys. And then also women that were 25 and older reported in their mobile diaries that they felt aged out. They felt a little bit too old, a little bit too mature for this trailer. And Alex can talk more about how the facial AI data lent to this group.
Yeah, it was really interesting as the sort of graphics, the bottom left shows that we saw brow furrow being particularly elevated during these moments. And what our data is doing here is effectively giving you a validated emotional signal, but it still needs someone like a qualitative researcher to interpret that and make sense of it depending upon the context. And so what this measure in itself tells us is that there's a high level of mental effort, a high level of mental engagement being exerted during set moments. Now, that isn't necessarily a negative thing, but in this context, we generally don't want viewers to be working too hard at sustained levels throughout the content, or working too hard mentally. And so I think what you saw here, what the brow furrow was pointing to, was actually a state of confusion or discomfort at the content that they were seeing. So hence the lost label that Paige spoke about. And we can go ahead now and just hear in their own words one of the respondents in this segment group.
Confusing, interesting, and mystery, kind of. So confusing is when they showed the animals. They were turning in their actions were like animals, like attacking like cheetahs and lions and stuff. And mystery is like why they were getting like drugged and stuff, or whatever, the like that thing in the blue, that blue juice, and why it should help them when they were not taking it out, like make it worse. And the other one, I think it was just like, I don't know, like confused and just mystery.
Yeah, so as we can hear, this is not the ideal target for this trailer. And an interesting thing was the client actually wanted some insight on how they could predict this film being rated, and this lent some insight that it wasn't appropriate for those 13 and under. And obviously you can hear that it didn't land with these viewers in the way that they wanted those certain scenes to land. It was more just completely lost on them and confusing.
Confusing.
And so moving into the next group, we called this group the intrigued viewers. And this was the group that there was the most opportunity from. This wasn't a group that it didn't land with, or it landed with them perfectly. This was a group where we could provide some really tailored feedback on how to get this group of people on board with this film and get them in the theater and get them more likely to view this film. So the intrigued viewers, the beginning of the trailer was really plot heavy, and it kind of, this group described that it caught their attention, and they were interested, and they were intrigued, they were engaged at the beginning. And then the trailer has this very distinct moment where it switches to this high pace intensity, like the young boy was discussing. There's these animal graphics and this loud text and loud dubstep music, and it lost this group, and they actually, as you will hear when Alex plays a clip for the Mobile Diaries, describe that distinct moment. But what's so cool is that we can see in the graph, exactly, where this moment happens and where, they start to, we lost them a little bit.
And the emotional measures preceding that were really interesting, because you saw this nice build in positive emotional measures. So smile impacting movement across the whole face, laddering up to what we could consider joy. But yes, that was sort of punctuated and halted in certain set key moments, really. So you could definitely pick out positivity, but you could definitely pick out where that positivity was punctured or arrested on occasion. So I guess, yeah, let's hear from one of the viewers.
In the very beginning of the trailer, I thought that it looked interesting, you know, kind of futuristic, traveling into space, reinventing mankind. So I thought that was interesting, but then I think it was towards the middle of the trailer that I felt like it kind of made it seem like, I don't know, classic teen dystopian plotline, which I didn't enjoy as much. And towards the end, it got more interesting, but I think that part in the middle, I'm not trying to remember when it was. Oh, yeah, it was when they were talking about, oh, they're trying to like control us. Maybe there's a better way to market that, because that kind of just turned off interest for me, because it made me feel like this is a movie I've seen before, I've read this plot before. It just kind of made me feel like it was almost every other young adult plot line that I've seen. But towards the end, it did get a little more interesting. But just in the middle, I feel like it kind of just seemed a little basic and cliche. But other than that, overall, I think it did sound interesting, and it did get more interesting towards the end. But yeah, I was really hooked in the beginning, and then towards the middle, it kind of lost interest for me.
Right, so because we had these participants answer these mobile diary questions instantly after viewing, they really can reflect on exactly how they felt and when they can pinpoint exactly, and then we can use the quantitative AI data to kind of see what they were feeling and converge together, which is a really unique component of using these metrics together. And then for our final group, these were our what we're calling the excited viewers, and this was, you know, kind of the target demographic that this trailer edit that they had sent with us landed with really well. These were the group that described it as genre defying. They saw that kind of switch from, you know, plot intensive to fast moving, flashy, kind of over the top aesthetic to be actually really exciting for them. They enjoyed the loud music. They thought that was unique. So this was a group that found the shock value of the trailer to be positive. And these were people that also, which we brought in from the quantitative data, typically enjoy sci-fi movies, which is an interesting point as the client was unsure how to market the genre of this film because it was so different from a lot of things that have fit into these really neat buckets in the film industry.
And from the emotion AI point of view, it's really interesting because often in trailer testing such as this, we'll pick up surprise or infer surprise based on the eyebrows being raised, right? So we'll kind of pick up viewers responding to unexpected things, and so we can say with confidence, there's something unexpected happening here that we can infer surprise from. Here, it went way beyond that, and so we could look at some other wider intensifier type measures, and so things such as the literal jaw drop. So there was surprise, but also jaws were dropping at moments here. So you're clearly getting a really powerful underlying emotional response from this set of viewers. And let's go ahead and hear from one of them.
I would say that at all points during the trailer, I was interested in seeing the movie. At the beginning for different reasons than by the end. At the beginning, I was interested because I do like sad movies and compelling movies and just suspenseful movies. I'm trying to think of the name of maybe it's called like Alone or something, where it's like George Clooney and Sandra Bullock just like alone in space for a prolonged amount of time. And I kind of thought it was going to be similar to that. But by the end, I was interested for completely separate reasons. It almost seemed like a YA kind of novel situation. The dubstep that was playing extremely loudly was shocking and surprising in a good way. I found myself like thinking it was going to be funny at times, which I wasn't expecting. So I think that it was kind of like a little bit genre defying from when I first started the commercial to when I ended it.
So we've had a very brief look at our different segment groups that we're able to pick out from the research. What we wanted to close with was by just thinking about, okay, so what can we learn from an emotional based segmentation or stratification in this way? I think the first thing that we wanted to raise was the importance of context and how there are flexible ways in which we can deploy technology to get to a naturalistic environment or a naturalistic context. So this research was conducted during the height of the pandemic pretty much, and we were able to do in-home research but still bring out rich consumer sentiment, and it was within that natural context, the natural context in which viewers would consume content and form opinions. So actually what started out as a bit of I guess a challenge, because you can't get people together in a movie theatre or in a central location, actually for the client, based upon where viewers are tending to watch trailer content, actually it was quite a neat fit ultimately in being able to show up where the trailer viewers would locate themselves naturally. The second important thing we wanted to bring out was recognizing the limits of demographics. And I think the world in which you can assume what someone thinks based on their sort of ethnic, age and geographical location are way behind us. So it's not to say that we never want to look at demographic characteristics. Of course, they can add meaning, but actually relying on them alone would not give you that tailoring and that targeting and that optimizing information that our media and entertainment client needed in this case. So the response and the targeting criteria had a much more considered, a much more nuanced emotional layer to it. So when they're going into activation, they're able to think about the different types of viewer that Paige outlined earlier.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said earlier, really, when we can add this deeper component of a why people react that way, I think data can only improve. And, you know, we really wanted this project to have a very rich product or rich report for our client, I should say. We were able to take who reacted one way, which is kind of like the classic like baseline way, like just doing a survey. But then we can add that when they react and how they react using AI, and then further learning why exactly they reacted that way and what could have made the trailer better for them, for those in the lost group and the intrigued group, so that really we can blend all of these sources together to get this really holistic report and deep report for our client that they can use to edit the trailer or market it in a certain way. They can do so much with a report when you kind of have this who, what, when, where, why picture, you know, which comes from blending qualitative and quantitative data together, which I think separately can only be richer when you put them together and be stronger.
And from my side, I just agree with everything Paige said. I think sometimes people look at technology such as the Affectiva Emotion AI and think it will make the decision for you. It won't make the decision for you. It gives you a really meaningful signal that actually allied with other types of data and with the expert interpretation on the qualitative side, you know, brings the whole piece together and enable us to get to really tangible, actionable advice for our end client. So thank you everyone for watching and listening. If you have any more questions or want to know more about Affectiva or Vidlit, please do reach out to us directly or use the chat function alongside. We'd love to discuss and get into the detail more. So yeah, thank you and goodbye from me.
Thank you, everyone.